We are actually live right now. I think I think I can comfortably say good evening. Good evening, Dr. Matibe. Start with the rose first amongst the thorns. How are you?
I'm well and you, Mr. Mdamba, sorry.
Mtwaba.
Mdwaba, how are you, Mr. Mdwaba?
No, I'm good. I'm good, doctor. I'm good. Dr. Masonta.
Yes, good
Dr.
evening, sir.
Muchenje. Good
Muchanja.
evening. Yes.
Good evening.
No, good
Yes.
evening, Mr. Mdwaba, and thank you very much for having us here.
Thank you, Doc. We can officially apologize and say technology, it normally beats the best, which is why we've met on this particular evening to discuss the impact of technology or no technology in the townships. Am I right?
Yes.
I'm gonna appeal to you. I've got few things. I just need to read and just quote on something to set context and for us to understand where are we going. You know, ever since I came across this challenge of discussing township with yourselves, I needed to arm myself so that I'm able to converse. So I've gone and I've done a little bit of reading. You know, it's always important to read. So I came across an article with a lady that has written it. She's in the Forbes magazine, Chanel Retief. She on an article she says South Africa's townships, the economy that never sleeps. I am not sure we're going to try and prove this economy that does not sleep, engaging with people like yourselves who are subject experts in these things. So she says, where there is a township, there are hopes, dreams, and fortunes to be made. Where there is a township, come rain or shine, COVID or civil unrest, an entire community of small and medium business will band together and merge from the ashes. Resonantly, resiliently, and it's very important, resonantly, resiliently. That means they're resilient, these businesses. Where there is a township, hard work will inevitably prevail over hardship. Presently, the South African economy is beating, pulsating heart that never stops. That's her. Okay? Then just looking at South Africa's best chance for economic growth, when you go through different articles, different papers that have been written, they're saying the informal sector is it will give us a chance to develop our economy given a focus. The township economy has a potential to support job creation and economic growth alongside South Africa's formal business sector. They are highlighting few things which we're going to highlight with you, doctors. Key policy changes combined with efforts to equip entrepreneurs with skills connectivity, access, and access to markets, could see the informal sector playing a meaningful role in South Africa's economic recovery. I did not write these things. I'm only putting as a foreplay or as a leveling thing for us to be able to talk. As the world moves towards an increasingly digital future, the world. Now, if we're talking about the world, where are we living our townships or densely populated areas, which normally is the township or peri-urban areas? Expanded connectivity infrastructure has become a defining feature of a modern economy. The question that I'm asking that you can keep in mind as we're going to be talking and conversing, how do you define modern economy? Is it that definition which is coming from the Western world, or modern economy is based on South Africa or African definition of modern economy? I'm not sure if I'm right. It allows people and businesses across the globe to connect with and access the world of digital innovation. We're going to be talking about smart township digital framework. How do you digitalize the township? What impact will it have where we've got hopefully entrepreneurs that have adopted ICT as a way going forward? Whether it is for social media, and sometimes when you read these documents, they talk about people using their cell phones only for kiko koning, I'm coming now, or downloading on Google and downloading music and dancing, or improved business performance through digital processes. Connected technologies have become part of nearly every aspect of our daily lives. The question that we're going to ask, informal or formal in the township, does technology really have an impact? Connectivity is vital for growth and future success of every global economy. If it's there and it's an enabler for digital economy, I'm sure it would be an enabler for the townships as well. And I'm asking a question: are we doing enough in SA to understand connectivity as an imperative asset for our economy to be inclusive? I'm finishing shortly. Connecting South Africa's most densely populated areas would translate to the greatest increases in total employment. Right now, when we go to documents, when we go to papers, it says most people that are not employed in the formal sector are employed in the informal sector. We need, hopefully, by the time we finish talking, and I hope we're going to finish today. If we don't finish, I'm going to ask you kindly to come back, because we need to interrogate. In your paper, you're talking about nice things, township becoming a innovation hub. We're talking about business parks. We're talking about all these things that I'm saying. If this can be raised on a paper, if you can raise these things, what are our decision makers saying? What are our policymakers saying about these things? Why are we not having them in this day and age? But anyway, there's a guy who says, Grand read, for people that are not yet using mobile internet, the mobile industry can deliver inclusive and prosperity that is fair and safe for all. We know in most areas in South Africa, you've got, in few areas, you've got 5G. In some areas, you've got best effort. Some areas, you've got 2G. Some areas, you've got in between. But there's never proper speed that they're saying on a cell phone or any device like what we call dongle in the township or in the streets, dongle. So now today, and this is the projection for the world. And if this is as bleak, and I've looked at South Africa, they're saying there's what we call coverage gap, which I need Dr. Masonta and Dr. Muchenge to explain to us and the people that are listening. There's what is called coverage gap. There's what we call usage gap. In the world coverage gap, there's 3.7 billion people without access to mobile broadband. Okay? There is 3.2 usage gap, where there's that gap that can be closed, and many factors. It's affordability, it's skills, it's lack of content, lack of lots of things. Now, and there's gender issues that is being raised, and from Dr. Matibe, in few days' time, there's going to be International Women's Day, and they're saying here women are prejudiced, women are put aside, men play with these technologies, women don't have these gadgets. Is it bias? Is it stereotype that technology is for men? Is it chauvinism that exists? How does it impact what we're looking at a township level as well? Entrepreneur women, entrepreneur men. Are these different genders treated equally? Uh, and my last thing is we need to look at access in the township, and connectivity does not mean access. How does the absence of connectivity or availability of connectivity and not availability of access hinders digitalization of the township? I rest my case. We can start. We can talk.
Wow. Dr.
Yes,
Masangati,
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you very much for that long opening, setting the scene, Mr. Mdwaba. And maybe looking into the coverage gap. Indeed, those numbers are staggering. Looking into and out of those 3.7 billion, there are some studies which suggest that about people are in Africa. So and, there are a number of studies also which we did in South Africa, looking into the connectivity gap, so the coverage gap. So let's use the way that is a coverage gap. So the coverage gap happens whereby a particular community does not have any mobile coverage, either
Yes.
can be 2G, can be 3G or 4G, and even 5G. Meaning that whether you've got a cell phone or you don't have, it's the same. Because with your phone, there's no coverage and you cannot connect, you cannot even get basic telephone call. So while one may not have the statistics now, we do have the statistics in South Africa. And when it comes to the point that you mentioned regarding whether there's enough that is being done, I say the private sector has been doing a lot. The private sector has been doing a lot, and you will see most of our mobile operators will talk about 99% coverage, in the country. So when we talk about the coverage gap, there's indeed some, and in those areas, for example, those areas whereby you find that it's 99%, and you ask yourself, what happens to this 1%? What must be done to this 1%? You may find that because coverage must go to where the population is.
Yes.
I understand even when you are driving on the highway between the big cities where there's no one, you still want to be connected. There is still coverage there. But where people lives, you find that there are areas where people lives, maybe because of the topological challenges, maybe mountainous, etc. It becomes a bit of a challenge or a very expensive exercise to provide a mobile coverage there. So that's where you need alternative technologies. You need alternative technologies to ensure that those people are covered, and then that brings the issue of saying coverage should not be only constrained to mobile coverage, mobile networks, whereby you use
Okay.
your traditional cell phone. And so, yeah, the points that we have raised them, that are important. we do have. I mean, when you look at the townships, for example, that's where you can talk about connectivity and access gap. Because when it comes to coverage, because they are densely populated, most of these townships, the coverage gap, we don't talk about the coverage gap when we look at the townships. Then that's where we talk about connectivity gap, accessibility, etc. And that's the reason why you find that we are talking about this framework that we are proposing to say how do we now ensure that the townships, whether informal or formal, especially the businesses there, are able to participate in the digital economy. And in order to participate in the digital economy, we need that to close that connectivity gap. We need to close that accessibility gap. We need to ensure that we move away from best effort. You can't run a business, especially a digital business, with just best effort. You need broadband to run that kind of business. So yeah, that's what our frameworks comes to look at. We are looking at how can, irrespective of whether you are formal or informal, how can you also participate into the digital economy? Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Masonda. Okay, can we continue, Dr. Muchenje?
All right. I'm just thank you so much, Sonabo, for affording us the opportunity to be able to to participate into this space of changing the face of our country from the lower level till we get to the these cities which we are all comfortable with. While
Yes.
in some other spaces, other people are actually struggling to just get simple connectivity to the to connect themselves to the world. So
Yes.
as what Dr. Masonda said, there are two different aspects which we have to look at, especially when it talks about coverage. I think most of the times the challenge becomes cost of infrastructure versus profitability, especially when it comes to businesses which are private. I can't put access infrastructure where there are no people, as much as I might want to provide the 100% coverage. So the profitability and the cost of infrastructure becomes very challenging. That's why you are going to end up getting into a space where you move from 5G to GSM, because you are looking at how much will I get return on investment for this. So in that space, then it means that the government and the private has to come up with a model in which there have to be some incentives into that infrastructure development so that we can be able to get to the 100% coverage. Otherwise, if we are going to leave it into the space of the private sector, chipping into the coverage of 100% is going to become difficult, because remember, when you're doing business, what is the most important for you is profit. It's not, it's not about putting all your infrastructure all over. That's why you can see when it comes to your 5G, there's only the major spaces where 5G is running is major towns, because if you want to provide more coverage in there, you know that you have the numbers, because the people use that connectivity for making serious business transaction. So that becomes another challenge when it comes to the coverage, when you look at coverage versus accessibility. Then when it comes to the issue of accessibility. Accessibility at times it goes far from just just getting your access to a 5G, getting access to your 4G. It goes down to a point of what kind of devices are you going to be able to run with, because that's what makes it becomes difficult. Because if you can provide 5G to people who can have devices which can only be able to operate in a 2 3G, the cost of that infrastructure becomes irrelevant for us to be able to move into that space. So the device which you are trying to give to people whilst you are providing these services is supposed to be also very important. But when I'm looking at the issue of coverage, I'm just going to look at how many DSTVs, satellite dishes do we have, even when you look at the informal settlement? You have a lot. But why can't the government
Yo,
use those?
it's a lot.
Is it? Why can't the government use that kind of infrastructure to push in the same, kind of access issues which we are trying to talk about? Because that's a simple way of actually doing it. You partner that with push in your connectivity through those kind of spaces. Because the thing which you are trying to do is to make sure that people, at the end of the day, they participate in this digital economy.
Yes.
You don't at times need to think far, but look at things which you have already, which you can be able to capitalize while you start building that infrastructure, which might be costly for you to do that. So partnership becomes very critical when it comes to access, when it comes to what? To coverage. So when we look at our framework, which you're proposing, we are proposing that kind of a partnership and say, okay, what can private do? What can the informal sector do? What can the small, medium enterprise do in the provision of this coverage, in the provision of this access, so that everyone within the space which you have can be able to participate in the economy? Because at the moment, people have been affected by COVID. But if the infrastructure was available, certain things could have not been so hard as what it has been. So I think that's my input in terms of access and coverage.
Yes, I hear you, and we just in the beginning. We're still jumping on the stairs. We've not entered the door. So for you, Dr. Matibe, you are person who don't care whether there's connectivity or access. Your role is to say entrepreneurs must be supported, entrepreneurs must flourish, and they must run businesses that are sustainable. What do you think is needed, or what must government do? Is it government that must act? Is it civil society that must be a partner? Is it private sector that needs to be a partner? How do we ensure that this entrepreneur, whether informal or formal, needs to flourish and make money?
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Mdaba. Before I answer that question, you touched on it. I wanted to say, I know that we're talking about informal sector because it's the main contributor of the township economy. However,
Yes.
if you look at the definition of the township economy itself, it involves both the formal and the informal. So when we bring the framework that we are proposing, we should not ignore the formal sector as well. That framework apply to both the formal and the informal, because both of them are operating in the township space.
Yes.
So when it comes then to say, what must the government do? I argue that government has their own problems. They need to focus on your basic services, your water, electricity, your housing. Already they have the burden. So what we're proposing is, it should be a private public partnership. It has to be a community. When you speak about the township, Kokasi, it's all about
Focus.
community. It's all about unity, right? It's all about the neighbor and umtasekaya, my brother, my sister. That is what is happening in the township. It's all about Ubuntu. So when we're gonna come and say, what must the government do? Maybe the question should be, what is it that the community wants? What is it that the SMEs or the entrepreneurs in the township want, and what are they willing to do in order to ensure that they operate and they sustain themselves in the township when it comes to, or with regards to ITC. So I'm saying it's not only the government that must do something. The expectation should not be on the government. The expectation should be that the government must review their policies to maybe enable environment for or township environment for private sector, number one, to get involved and assist for the entrepreneurs in the township. If I don't own it, I will not care about it, whether it destroys or not. And not only the entrepreneurs themselves, the community, because when those entrepreneurs are flourishing, they're going to create jobs. They're going to give it's going to also impact or affect the economy. They're going to create jobs for the society within the townships. So it's not only about what must the government do. It's about how can the government review their policies to enable the environment for the private sector to chip in, and what is it that the entrepreneurs themselves should do, and the society within the same township. That's my take.
Can we agree to disagree?
Yes.
That I was talking to someone today, and I was saying to this person, there's an entrepreneur before SMME.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, if we agree, how do you take an individual youth from an individual who has got an idea and change that individual from a normal consumer to an entrepreneur that is servicing consumers, okay, or clients? Mm-hmm. Is it not government's responsibility? And I'll tell you why. There's challenges in the township. We never put ourselves as Black people in the township. Okay? We were pushed to the township. So the old government pushed us to the township. The new government, 25 years later, was supposed to ensure that the gap that was created by the push has been closed, right? In ensuring that there's an elevation of poverty, unemployment rate is addressed. So that means proper policies were supposed to have been introduced. So let's not take government away from this thing.
No, we're not.
Two, and this is not a political platform, but we need to make reference so that we understand each other.
Yes.
Our South African government, the old regime owned Telkom, okay? Even owned Transtel. Okay, I worked at Transtel. Okay, the new government changed it to NNO. It became Liquid, and it was flooded before Liquid. Okay, Telkom listed percentage flooded. I think we own 41% plus PIC and whoever. Vodacom, we start Vodacom, we dispose Vodacom. Now Vodacom owns DFA that owns fiber that's supposed to go to the township. They've consolidated Vodacom. Everything now, Vumatel is part of the whole thing, so it's a big structure. Né? If government does not own the infrastructure to service people to have connectivity and access, how do we service these people? Because private sector, as Dr. Mushanje has indicated, private sector wants to see ROI.
Yes.
The shareholders, they put 2 cents, they want 1,000 rand back. Okay? Now, we are here, and this is our discussion. Also, just so that we give a bigger context, there's what we call socio-economic capital. In the township, we've got crime rate.
Yeah.
We've got poverty. We've got unemployment affecting. We've got issues affecting SMMEs. Crime is high. The sense of ownership is a challenge of certain structures within the township. Now, how do we ensure that your framework getting the township digitized. Okay, so if it's digitized, the entrepreneur becomes empowered. The entrepreneur becomes enabled. So he is in a position, or she's in a position where she can transact, she can engage from the township. And I want us to say, with digital technologies evolving rapidly, does SA need a modern approach to policy and regulation to keep up with other digitally driven economies? Okay. And for me, if that framework addresses, there's policy issues, there's regulatory, which is policy, telecommunication, you know that we're sluggish. We are we're one of few countries in Africa that did not go 4G properly. So want to jump to 5G. China is at 6G. We're even struggling to award spectrum. You've got CSIR, you've got Centec, you've got government organs and institutions that can do these things, but we're not doing them. So, doctors, please guide us. Policy, regulations, what do we need to do to make your framework work?
Okay, if I may come there, especially on the point that you had raised initially when you mentioned the flashing of the government infrastructure. We have to face the facts. Government has shown, demonstrated to be, especially our government, to be ineffective with running infrastructure. So
Yes.
building the narrative that let's take things back to government is just taking us nowhere. So we have to be bold. I think for us, when you talk about what is modern technology or what is modern society, we have to be bold. And I mean, I like what the president said during like I said, this is not a political talk, but where he acknowledged for the first time that a private sector generates jobs, you know, it is the duty or the responsibility of the government to enable the environment. So now we are not talking about government funded informal sectors or entrepreneurs. When we talk entrepreneurs, remember that Vodacom that you see there, it started as an entrepreneur. Like you said before, an SME, there's an entrepreneur. So
Yes.
as we support and create these entrepreneurs, we want them to be the ones, especially the locally based, to be the ones who will be owning this infrastructure, to be the ones who will be investing, so that we know that the money is not just only staying in Santen or going overseas. It circulates and builds the economy of the South Africa. So once we agree, or maybe we agree to disagree, that government, any infrastructure in government's hands won't be efficient. You're saying that. Then that's where we can say, let us now find some common ground to say, how can government enable the environment from the regulatory perspective? You spoke about Centec, etc. With government or SOE, state-owned entities, I mean, you can see Centec now have to find a way of how to remain in the business, especially after the digital migration. They were the go-to when we were broadcasting through analog TV. And now with the digital TV, streaming, and all these challenges which are coming on how to consume media, Centec have to find a way on how to survive. So and
Yes.
why didn't they pick it up? Because as a public sector, it is slow to adapt to technology. It is slow to adapt to the evolving nature of the technology. So if the whole network or mobile network was in the government's hands, believe me, we'll still be on 3G. We wouldn't even be talking 5G, because we have to find consensus. We have to find you understand. But in the private sector, you make a decision, you look into that. So again, we must not only think as profit as even, because it is through that profit which it has to start at an informal sector. It has to start with that entrepreneur, that small township entrepreneur. You have to learn what is profit. And I don't want to go into capitalize a capitalist state or etc. But once we take profit as even, then that's where we say, okay, then we fold our hands, let us be entitled, have the entitlement mentality, government take care of everything. But for me, it's more of how do we bring, do we start challenging or reviewing our regulations such that our framework now can bring all this together, can bring all the key players like Dr. Muchenzi has mentioned, to say the informal, formal entrepreneur, the investors, the government, to come together. We have to change that such that we are not just experts as the country in developing policies, but now we move into implementation. I think there's a lot of policy. Some of them we don't even know. I remember the other time we had to invite the CEO of ICASA, the regulator, talking about some sharing of the infrastructure. They're there to point to us some sections somewhere in the Electronic Communication Act, which they said actually the act allows that. It's just that people are not talking about it. So for me, there's enough, a lot. It's not enough, but there's a lot of regulations, policies, but making them, applying them is a critical problem. If we can deal with that, then I think we'll solve most of the problem.
And if I can jump in there, Mr. Mdamba, I wanted to also add on what.
I'm listening to you, Dr. Matibe.
Okay. I wanted to jump in there and say yes, and especially when it comes to entrepreneurship, we have beautiful policies in South Africa that supports entrepreneurship. But again, it comes to the implementation. And now we're not talking the general entrepreneurship. We're saying the township. Reason being, majority of people are in the townships, and if we are to also allow the entrepreneurs to contribute to the economy, why can't we look into the township? I think it was 2019 when the president was talking in his speech that we need to look into the smart cities. And my argument is, why do we have to start with the smart cities if there are majority of people in the township? And if we can work in developing township, turning them into smart townships, they will feed into one smart city. And that means it's not only one focus area that is well developed and the townships are being neglected. So let's start with the townships and move up. And again, I'm with Dr. Masonto saying government is doing that much. I don't want to say less or more, but it's doing that much. And I think it's high time, as the entrepreneurs, it's high time as the communities in the township stand up and say, what's in it for us? And what is it that we can do to work together with the government? And rather than waiting on the government, because we know we're going to wait forever, but let's stand up as entrepreneurs, partner with the government and the private sector to do something for our own economy within the townships.
Am I right by saying, Dr. Matibe, that with government willing, if you look at Soweto and you look at Mzilikazi Street, that if government was willing really to empower the township entrepreneurs, all streets or all businesses in Soweto would be like the ones that are in that street, right? Now, Dr. Muchenzi, in your paper or abstract that I've gone through, you are talking about business parks, where basically a business park will form a bridge between the formal and informal, and bridging, combining the two different communities. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sonobo. I think one thing which you have to look at it is, we are trying to look at it in a bottom-up approach,
Yes.
rather than a top-bottom, because
Yes.
that is why we are saying, if the government is not, it's gonna kind of implement the policies on what they think this is what people want, then it's gonna be a problem, because you are gonna bring something which people don't want, and they are not gonna take ownership out of that. So when you bring it from the bottom up and say, you go and find out what is it that these entrepreneurs want, even before I even get to what I'm going to talk about, I just wanted to make us think that we can even go down to say smart villages
Yes.
than even smart towns. Why can't you just start with
Yes.
smart villages? You start with smart villages, are going to build up to a smart township, which is going to build up to a smart city.
Yes.
So if you look into that approach of saying bottom up, then it becomes easier. So if you're looking in our framework of saying we are trying to start with the smart township, because we are saying these guys are closer to these cities, these big cities which are there, then
Mm-hmm.
infrastructure is quite accessible for some of these things to happen. Then from that point of view, we are saying, okay, why can't you then bring up a business park, a
Yes.
connectivity hub within that
Mhm.
township, so that we can be able to give accessibility, because accessibility comes into play now, because some of these guys don't have the access to these facilities which you're talking about, this connectivity which need that broadband in their spaces, in their homes. So you are going to bring in a business park which is going to be able to be a hub through which you are going to upskill this entrepreneur who doesn't understand these technologies and be able to incorporate these digital processes within his business. So we need to give him that space first, so that he can have that kind of training, that kind of management from that point of view. Then as he grows, then he can be able to stand on his own out of that business park. So it means that this business park becomes a platform which we can be able to teach, we can be able to disseminate information, because some of the stuff about what we are talking about, it might be too technical, it might be a lot of jargon which is being pushed, which makes people not to adapt some of these things. But if there's a platform which they can be able to be, sit in, information be disseminated to them, training be offered to them. We have sitters. What are they for?
Good
We have
question.
sitters. They are supposed to be there for, in order to allow us to be able to train people who might be not be qualified academically, who might be excluded academically. So you can see that there's a lot of things which might be there. Some people might not be academically good, but their intelligence which they have might actually beat some of the academics which you have. So what we are saying is bring up that platform so that it can be able to become innovative. And while it becomes innovative, you use that same business park or that environment to be able to bring in these technologies which you are trying to push into this smart technology. Because we want entrepreneurs to be able to be the ones who are holding the flag in
Yeah.
pioneering and improving this township economy. So that is
Right.
my take when it comes to the business park.
Mm. Dr. Matibe, do you, now that Dr. Muchenje has outlined the thinking in your framework about the business parks, will digitalization have an enabling environment for sustainability of the sector, the informal sector? Or can I just ask you a question
Yeah.
again? Just this is now hoping that the environment gets digitalized, but are the entrepreneurs digitally ready?
Ah.
Okay, and in the in the connectivity hubs, there's training. Is this going to be great training? Is there a governing the way you see it, is there a governing document or policy to manage? There's a lot of great training to our children. The informal sector, this mother or auntie is working very hard to make money every day, pays a 5,000 or 20,000 for the child to be educated, to have the technical skills. At the end, fast forward 2 weeks later, the child knows nothing. Uh, please walk me through from. Let's see how this framework
Yeah.
we get it working.
All right. Thank you for that. First of all, when we think of, I think maybe we need to change our mindset when it comes to informal sector. When we think about informal sector, there's a perception that it's that umama on the street selling vegetables, or the youth, young man who's walking on the street selling your fruits, on the by the taxi rank or by the traffic lights. Informal sector goes beyond that, because you find that there's businesses, your carpentry, and your construction, that is not registered. There are businesses that are doing well, that can scale when you look at what they're doing within the informal sector, but they're not registered. So it's
Yes.
not only your umama selling amagwinya, but there's also somebody who's doing your plumbing somewhere, who's, and the remember now, the informality of it is because the person is not legally registered, operating, but not don't have documents to operate. That's what makes that person legal, illegal, or not illegal, informal, because they're not formally operating. So it's not the size, it's not. So with, and then within entrepreneurship, then you have your subsistence entrepreneur and so forth. So that is what we needed to clarify. Informal sector or informality doesn't mean one person standing on the street. There's so much, it's broader than that. So when it comes to readiness of the entrepreneurs to accept the ICT, I believe they are ready. If you claim to be an entrepreneur, you're not innovative, you're not creative, and you're not willing to adapt to the change, then you're not an entrepreneur. So because of that, I say entrepreneurs are ready for ICT. But the question is, maybe the question is the trust that comes with the ICT. Why am I saying that? Because in the township, when I started, I said it's umtasekaya, my sister, my brother, it's the family, the neighbor. We see each other as the unit, as the community. We know each other. Now there's this foreign thing that comes that we don't understand how it works, or we don't trust. Because when some of the entrepreneurs, when you talk to them, or the people in the townships, when you talk to them, it's like, I would rather put, some of them will say, I'd rather put my money under the mattress, because I don't know what the bank is doing with my money. What if I go and then you understand? So it's maybe what we need to work on is the trust of the ITC rather than of the entrepreneur, or to the ITC or ICT. Sorry about that. Rather than the readiness. If they are not ready, then they are not entrepreneurs. That's my argument. And at the training of the young ones, that also supports my argument to say entrepreneurs are ready for the ICT. What we need to work on, maybe go and research more, is to the extent of trust in implementing or adapting the ICT. That's where we need to go and look into that, but not the readiness. And the training of the young ones, umama will be paying 5,000 for my child to do the ICT, the computer or the information technology course. At the end of the day, that child doesn't know anything about technology. That is where the work integrated learning comes in. You whatever the institution that the young one is training with, they need to partner with entrepreneurs. And again, because we're promoting the smart township, so that young one who's studying that information technology has to partner with entrepreneurs within the township. That will be what builds the trust, because they're bringing the skill to the entrepreneur in the township to say, this is how you do it. And they show them. Again, it's not only work integrated learning for the students, but it's also learning in the job for the entrepreneur, because they're learning how the technology works. They're building trust into the technology, and at the same time, they're giving a skill to the student who's actually who's studying this technology. So you see, it's a link between the institution, the student, the technology itself, and the entrepreneur.
Thank you. Yeah. And I need to ask you again this question. So sorry, Dr. Mason and Dr. Muteng. I need to ask you this question. Do we need to formalize the informal sector or enable them to grow without changing their format or structure? Okay? Who said formalization is the solution? Do some entrepreneurs have the capacity or capability to manage a formal structure? Are we not going to be pushing them to a point where the business that has been running for years as a survivalist type of business, let's leave the CIPC documentation, that is just paperwork, it's government track and trace. Do we really, if you can answer me and for people that are listening, for them to understand, because in my books, I think it will have a negative impact to some, I'm not generalizing, impact to some. Some will disappear because of reconfiguring this thing, and make us feel comfortable that that's the way to go. Without you forgetting that sometimes a sole proprietor, Sifiso trading as ICT technologies, is informal, but Sifiso is a legal entity himself. So it's not informal. It's informal in the white eyes of Western, as I've said. So please.
Yes. Oh, thank you for that question. Look, Mr. Mdwaba, not all informal businesses should be formal. We cannot formalize all one, and we cannot treat all with one umbrella. No. So when I started, I clarified as to there's more to informality than just umama at the corner, right?
Yes.
So first of all, I'm thinking the awareness. We need to first, as the academics, as me and my colleagues with this framework, maybe then we need to find out the reasons why they are informal. Research shows that some of them are informal by choice. They just want to be there. I just want to put the food on the table. Some of them are informal because there are no opportunities in the formal sector, right? Some of them is because they are not aware of the opportunities that are there in the formal sector. Therefore, if we can identify, maybe rationalize behind the informality of the small businesses or the entrepreneurs themselves, then we can be able to move forward and say, now that we understand why they are informal, then what do we do next? Those that are saying, I'm comfortable, for me, I just want to be able to put food on the table for my kids. Again, because majority of those informal businesses are run by women who wants to, so then we need to find out why, because we have to support women. One of your questions earlier was, is it stereotype that ICT is for only men, not women? Yes, it's a stereotype. And we need to find ways to support women in the in the space of entrepreneurship, and make sure and allow them to scale, and because they have beautiful ideas. So yes, that's that. So we find, number one, so we find out the rationale behind their informality. After that, the next step is, how can we support you? If you stay informally, how do we support you to sustain your business in the informal sector? Those that are saying, because I was not aware of the opportunities, or because there were no opportunities for me, how do we support you to ensure that you register, you become formal, and you scale? That's what we need to do. But the first thing first, what is the rationale behind the informality? And we cannot run away from the fact that the economy, not only in South Africa, but Africa as a continent, is actually boosted by the informal sector. So that is where we need to go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thobela, Tate Mason.
Khoshiaka.
there is a statement that says business centers to be the epicenters of smart townships. Something needs to be done. And within your framework, if you can explain what needs to be done for them to be the epicenter of a smart township. Not forgetting that there's issues already in the township of that people, there's adoption versus non-adoption of ICT. Okay. Now, if you've got a business center, what needs to be in the business center? What needs to be done in the business center to change the mindset of people in the township that are going to engage with the business center? It's a good idea, but how do we make it work? How do we make it functional? And how do we support it to be sustainable?
Yes, no, thank you very much. That is an interesting one, and I wish CD could have taken this one. but
I'll
but
jump in.
yeah, for me, because already there is a lot of infrastructure which has been put into those business centers, and these business centers are there within the townships. So now the way the community see them, and we've seen this with the unrest of last year June, whereby communities will just go there and start looting because they don't feel that sense of ownership. They don't see the value to say, okay, this is a center where we can actually also generate income. They will just go there and start looting and taking and destroying that the business center. But if we can make them such that it's not only they are not only focusing on having this supermarket where you just go and buy and go home, go and buy and go home. How do we create example, the business park? So because there's already infrastructure there, that's what I'm saying. How do we leverage on that? Because already there's enough traffic going into those business centers. How do we ensure that when somebody goes there into these business centers, we already have a skill center within that business center. There's already a training which can be offered there. There's already an accessibility for entrepreneurs, not just to go there because I'm going to rent a space to be a barber shop or to sell this, but there's already a space for me whereby I can provide more of the services which go beyond being seen. Because currently what we see in most of these business centers, that they come into our township, and all these big supermarket and chain stores, they come there, then they're just there to provide services to us and take money and go away. But we don't feel as the township people that we can own. We have ownership of this township. So something has to be done. There's especially the triple P, the public private partnership, such that we create a space there for the communities, the township communities, to have sense of ownership, not to just go there and sell. But when we talk about these skills, training, etc., they are offered the work integrated learning. They can already be managed and offered through those business centers, because I'm worried that with the online shopping coming in, and once these townships are connected, and they're connected or they're covered, but now accessibility is now no longer a problem. Many people in those townships are also going to go online shopping. So those business centers, they may remain white elephants. So if we don't plan earlier on how are we going to make sure that these spaces are well utilized, then I think we may be losing in that space. But I'll see maybe just jump in there.
Thanks, Doc. Another thing just to add on what Dr. Masonta says is, how do we sustain these business parks, business centers? It's not a new thing, actually. When you go to your cities, the business parks are there. But when you go to your townships, it's your one side somewhere for informal sector to go and have those desks. So we're saying turn that informal sector space into that business park. But for it to be sustainable, we need to localize it. What do I mean by localizing? It has to be owned by the entrepreneurs themselves, and the employees should be the local themselves. They know if they vandalize the park, they lose their jobs. So for me to save my job, is for me to take care of the business park. So the entrepreneurs, that is why when I started, I said we cannot give the responsibility to the government alone. Government must enable the environment for private sector to work together with the entrepreneurs and build these business parks. The entrepreneurs need to employ the locals. And in that way, these business parks, these business centers will be sustainable. That's one contribution of
I hear you.
sustaining these business parks.
Mm.
That's one way of sustaining them.
How do the business centers enable the township environment for things like innovation coming into fore? You know, there's no, without innovation, there's no growth. This is me. So, how do they enable the environment for innovation to take place, creativity, innovation to happen? How must it be put together? How must it be constituted? Do you need people from within? If you're saying they need to be localized. Do we have enough skill in the township to localize those environments, and the township becomes an ecosystem that it is now, but more structured ecosystem where you find easily people that are going to train and ensure and nurture and guide and mentor and coach youngsters to come up with innovations and be able to take the innovation in and commercialize innovation. So you've got technology from Ekasi going into Mahueng. You know, how do you see it work in your framework? How do we reconstitute these places? Because you're saying they are there, but they're not working. How do you reconstitute them?
I just want to give it as some small example. I'm sitting in Zimbabwe right now, in Harare. And
now?
Yes.
Okay.
So just yesterday, we visited Great Zimbabwe University. They have the Innovation Hub. When you go to the Innovation Hub, the academics in the university are the ones that are working there. You have your those who barukang, what do you say?
Yes.
Those who make the traditional
sewing, the ladies that sew.
Ladies, they have a full set of the whole room. That's those ladies that are sitting there. They are making the garments in there. You have another a room again whereby the students themselves are the one that it's a food science now that are testing all the food and everything. And when I was asking, they say the students make this let's say coffee, and after 2 weeks they take the coffee to test. You take those testing to see that it's suitable for everything. Within 3 weeks of making that, the students have the IPs in their name. That is a model that can be adapted in the township, in the parks, because now it's not only to running the business, but now you have your center where all these innovations are happening. But again, we don't have enough skills in the townships alone. Then we need to partner. That's where the private sector comes in. That's where we would bring the externals to come. Your coach, we will bring them to come and say, work with us, train us, but know that you leave the skill so that those who stays behind, they're the ones who trains the locals.
And you leave the IP to be owned by a local.
By the locals, because we said you need to localize the business parks. So you leave the IP or you teach them how to make their own and register their IPs in their own names. So that is
I
that is one aspect, another way of sustaining these business parks as well.
I hear
Can I-
you. Zimbabwe is very progressive, I must say. I work with a university in Zimbabwe as PITA, Women University in Africa.
I was there today.
They are our partner in the ICT side.
Yes.
Okay, we do wonderful things. There's even courses that we've working together, online courses that their students are doing through us. Okay, December, when our children were kicking ball and going to parties in South Africa, their students were doing introduction to cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Okay, now, anyway, and for me, for me, I need to look at this thing. The framework impresses me, but I want to look at the framework post the ravages of COVID pandemic, where people have lost jobs, people are back in townships. Some people really had jobs that they needed their skill, so that skill now is sitting in the township. Okay? And how do we ensure and position those people sitting in the township within the framework to embrace 4IR? Okay? And really grow, instead of them coming out of the township, going to work again, in the sentence. They embrace 4IR, they build the township, whichever township that you look at in South Africa. And how can we take, as let's say with decision makers, how do we take that framework and use it and implement it and make it work? Let's say we did not know what the framework is saying. Taking what the framework says now, or we knew but we decided to be ignorant and ignore it. Now the framework is saying, here it is. Here's a tool. I'm putting this tool in your hands. This is the challenge that we have in the township. You can have a business parks. You can have connectivity hubs. How do they take it? Are you available to assist in operationalizing it? Do you want to operationalize it? Government must support you to operationalize it, or you want arm's length and say, as we bring theory, we bring the research that we've done, put it into a document. If you want to operationalize it, read it and interpret it yourselves. Or we're going to take it, be consultants, and make sure that you do it. Which one is the best method, and how do you see it working? Because there's a lot of documents, libraries are full of these documents. I've read it, I've copied it in my mind, it's in my mind now. So but there's no one who can implement it better than yourselves.
Yep. All right, thank you so much, Sonoba. I think it's at the moment when we thought about this idea, we thought of not just putting it into theory and put it out there for people to consume, then it ends there. Because we have a lot of documents, like you're saying, a lot of libraries with documents which have been just good theories, good frameworks, good proposals, put them, shelve them there, then that's the end. And it's not going to be able to contribute to what we are trying to propose in our document. So for us to be able to operationalize it, we need to be able to have partnership. Us thinking, our thinking behind it is going to be even become shaped further as we are going to interact with the real people and be able to actually make these things practical. Because we have CSR with Dr. Masonta there. He has a lot of information around connectivity, about infrastructure, navigating a way in which we can be able to do this. We have entrepreneurs who are out there who don't even know some of the things which they can be able to access without even paying any cent. So what are we saying? We have government policies there, like we have talked about a lot of policies which the government have enabled. So we need to be able to create this thing and practicalize it and implement it. And as we are implementing, we are going to shape it to become even much better, so that it becomes a test ground. Whatever wherever township which you're going to pick, implement it on it, see how it's supposed to work. Partner with the private, partner with the government, giving us all the resources, be able to work to make sure that this thing at the end of the day becomes practical, which can be able to achieve what the president is talking about, smart
Yeah.
city. So we need to start somewhere. So us getting into this platform, which you've allowed us to be in, is a step towards the right direction which you want, opening us to the public, to the businesses, so that we can be able to think, to see what we can be able to participate in this proposal which we are making. So the issue, like I wanted to say before, is the issue around the IP. This issue around IP, when you look at it at the moment, because of digital technology, which has actually continued to increase with the pandemic, it is becoming very critical, because that is where the trust for the entrepreneurs fell, because they've kind of come up with an idea, then the idea, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, they presented this to somebody else, then the next moment the idea is not coming up. Then 2 months down the line, there's somebody who has money trying to implement it, and is going to implement it in Centon. So when it comes from Centon, it's going to come from Centon, coming back to that, to that township, or coming back to those people who have. Then the idea said, but I thought about this thing and I talked about this. So that is the way the IP becomes very critical. So those are the things which this project is also trying to, to bring in to the attention of the entrepreneurs, that your IP is very, very critical. I think we are sitting with. I'm just sorry to mention this. We have this the Vodacom SMS issue.
Yes.
It,
No, it's
it's
a
it's
reality.
it's a reality about life. Is if you have some skills and some innovations which are coming from township, we can actually even come up with our own ways of doing things within our our communities, which is more efficient, which can be able to serve us much better than what is coming up to be serving us, which is being proposed to make us to serve. Because some of the things we don't really enjoy them, because they are not our, we have a lot of things which is happening. Like at the moment, we are talking about COVID. Why can't you just able to come up with a technology which people can supply goods and deliver the goods within the township, and we use entrepreneurs within the township? But we now have RAM coming in. We now have DHL. Why not using that to develop these people so that they can come up with their own ways of doing things on the delivery, and you empower that kind of a thing? Drone technologies coming into that space. You empower these guys so that you can be able to do that. You might not even need many employees, but be able to empower the community. That is what we are talking about.
It's a good statement that you've made. Out of one of the magazines or paper that I've read, one guy says the problem is with us black people. Anything from the township we think is cheap.
Yeah.
We think it's not up to standard. It must be a DHL or it must be a RAM. So I think it's mindset also. So on, I need you, you are the only people who are capable of integrating the mindset as well. The mindset is a very interesting. It's all in the mind, and people need to be reprogrammed in the mind that a service is a service. The same people that are delivering as formalized or formal businesses, REMs and them, that guy, if he leaves his employment and goes start another one called home, That guy knows what needs to be done. So support him to grow to be a RAM. So as part of your framework, Dr. Matibe, I think you need you also need to look at how do we decolonize the mind.
Yes. Yeah.
As you nicely putting it, we need to decolonize the mind. The entrepreneur we must move the Western thinking and put Ubuntu thinking.
Yes.
Will go a
Correct.
long way. So that we are not running out of time, we're closing to wrap up, and you'll guide me. You've made some recommendations on the abstract that to put a smart township digital framework, government need to put the smart township whole thing as a national, basically imperative or national agenda. What must government do? Must they legislate it? Must the president be as bold as when he talks about Lanseria smart city and say all townships, and as Dr. Muchenje has said, smart village, smart township, smart city. Not start from top, start from bottom. What do you recommend as part of the framework? What must be done to be this thing to be a national agenda?
Yes, no, want to start saying legislate it, put it in the policy, etc. That is nice. It's just taking us back to say, okay, yes, we will tick the box. It's now in the policy, and then we forget about it. And we are good at that as a government, as a
Yes,
country.
yes,
So for me, it's more of like when the president spoke about the smart city and how much he's so dedicated to see it being realized. Talk up. Let's put it on the agenda. Putting in the agenda for me is not only putting the policies, because those policies again they become barriers. They become barriers to implementation. But through this kind of I mean, in addition to those to realize that recommendation that we have put, we spoke about new ways of financing. We have to find a way of financing the entrepreneurs in order
yes,
to this bottom up. Because once we say
yes.
policies is still top down, but once it comes from bottom up, it's
Mm,
gonna be realizable. Nobody's enforcing it to us. It's us now seeing that we have to be smart in order to cope in post COVID-19. And then we also look at creating the right environment. I say
mm,
in addition to those recommendations, one the environment, like what we spoke about, the business park, etc., is there. It becomes easier for a formal or non or informal business to get the financial support when you go into a particular space. You're not told, no, go to CIPC, what those papers, get the papers, be a PTY LTD before we can do this. Once you address those, how do we ensure that there is that accessibility of ICT technology? Because once we don't have that support from the ICT, the infrastructure itself, there's lack of infrastructure. It won't be realized no matter how much policy we put there. And then finally it goes to the skills. Once we push the skills, there's over supply of skills. I just don't have the whole story, or I mean the time to talk about the India. And every bank today, they're outsourcing their ICT, their IT skills to India. You understand? Because I mean, you go there, every child in India can program, can do everything. So how do you push that from the bottom up? So for me, it is based on that. I don't think we have to rush to say let's get the. Once we say policy, let's put a policy. Believe me, our government is good at that. You'll see it tomorrow. It will be there. But then we're still saying, how do we implement it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you. As for before we close and wrap up, there's a question that has been sent on my phone. I don't know why this person didn't put it here. He says any case studies, including practical strategies for affordable, accessible, quality broadband connectivity. Can we pilot some of these strategies for the townships?
Yes, there are. I don't know. I just jumped in without asking my
No, no,
colleagues.
no, 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 no.
Yeah, no, there
Kill
are a number of.
Kill Zenkeng, doctor. Kill Zenkeng.
Okay, yeah, actually, there are a number of case studies, and especially here looking into alternative technologies. Like I said, there are some areas whereby we don't have to always look into mobile or technologies. There are a number of technologies, and some of them are funded through a technology innovation agency, whereby I know one of the entrepreneurs in South Africa, they've created a sort of an alternative to fiber, but it's a wireless, connectivity, and that has been tried and tested in some of the townships. We are also from the CSIR through the funding from the
Mm,
UNDP, having a number of communities, townships that we are connecting through the technology that we call television white spaces.
yes.
For me, is that this opportunity that you have offered us to come out here and meet with these entrepreneurs will be happy, and we're expecting a lot of questions, and also to connect with these entrepreneurs so that we can take partner with them, because like you said, we have this idea, don't want this a paper to be another theory which gathers dust. We better stop publishing and start working. So for me, the more entrepreneurs and this across South Africa will want to partner with us, we make that call to say, please, we are available. Let us work through this. In cases where you want to test some of the ideas, let us partner. Let us help us realize this. And then, yeah, we know that there may be even other frameworks out there which are looking at the townships. So through partnership, and not just only generating papers, but working into implementation, I think those case studies are there, and we can even create many.
Yeah, and
Where's
again, if I were to add quickly, Mr. Mdoba,
no,
and again, if we are going to localize, if we are going to actually implement the localization of the smart township, that is the one way is to partner with the entrepreneurs and say, what are the strategies? How do we work together to implement? And again, we did say that it's time to take the ownership of our townships in order to turn them into smart townships. So yes, I do agree that we work together and we partner in order to ensuring that the framework comes to life.
okay? Dr. Muchanje.
Yes.
Yes. What is your parting shot on the framework?
I think my parking shot which I can give is we have we have we have this is a starting point for the long journey ahead, and that journey for us to walk with it, to walk to that destination which we are proposing. We need the government, we need the entrepreneurs themselves, we need big businesses, we need even collaboration with other people who have also ventured into the same space so that we can make this thing a reality. We are not the source of all the knowledge or all the skills or all the strategies, but all together we can make what we want to achieve at the end of the day practical.
An organization like PICTA, what do you think can do with yourselves to address the framework? I call it STDF.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Smart Township
Digital.
Digital Framework,
Yeah.
STDF. So the STDF needs to be alive.
Yes.
It needs to be implemented. I suppose in a contained ecosystem or community then take the learnings from that one and you can roll it out because you've got informed challenges that you've addressed as you iron out things. We are a civil society organization. We exist because communities exist. Without communities, PITA would not be in existence.
Yeah.
We disseminate information like we're doing now and post this thing. So maybe offline we can have a discussion, a quick discussion, and see how we align. Because personally, this is me again from PITA. We've not addressed everything. Yes, we've touched things because we're in a hurry to address. And if I would like to hear from yourselves. Did we exhaust? Did we address the STDF? Or we touched, fella, we've shaken it, but we've not stirred it.
I'll go first.
Yes.
I would say we introduced it.
Yes.
So it's in the beginning, we introduced it to say there's a framework that exists and if this framework can be tested, because it's still a theoretical framework, if it can be tested and see that it works, the whole plan is to test it in the Gauteng province first, and if it works, then we roll it out across the country, across the continent, so forth. So that is the whole point. So that is why I'm saying we introduced it, and what Pike and we are thankful for this platform, because now the next step would be, because we want to bring the entrepreneurs in the room. One thing that you asked, the question that you asked was, are they ready to accept the ICT? And we're saying we need to hear their voice now, so that we can work on the framework and because it's a continuous journey. Thank you.
Towel.
Yeah, no, ka Sepedi ba ra ntšhi boloko ka moka. So
Thank
so
you
you
on
are
that
right.
note.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. For me, in wrapping up and signing off, the STDF for me, needs to be a framework for communities to be sustainable. That's the S. With tangible results when it is implemented, developmental in nature, with a feedback system for enhancement and further development. That's how I look at it.
So it's not an IP protected, right, or trademark protected.
No, it's not IP protected. We are all together here. We are all together here. I'm not sure. Look, that's me. When I looked at it and I played around with it, I said, as you were talking, I was scribbling on the side here, trying to make sense of it. But look, for me, you're talking about sustainability. You're talking about tangible results, inputs and outputs. You're talking about developmental of the entrepreneur, the young African. To be an entrepreneur, and he needs to sustain. The ecosystem must be enabled. It must be empowered. It needs to be empowered, and there needs to be a feedback mechanism. It must not be a policy issued in parliament, and once it's promulgated by Kenya, go shelving and forget about it.
Yeah.
So and if it gives that feedback, this is the framework, then you are able again to tweak it and make sure that it works. For me, I'm going to go out for a few seconds and say we go jingle, then I talk to you offline for a few seconds. For people that are listening, thank you very much for joining us for the hour and a half. We very sorry we started slightly late, but thank you very much for giving us support. Digitalized Township talk show. It will continue on bi-weekly basis going forward. I'm going to ask our honorable guests to come back at some point, whether all three or one. It depends, but we will keep you posted as we go. Goodbye to everyone who's here. I'm going to sit with my guests because they are my guests from now onwards. God bless until we meet again. Thank you very much. Dr. Matibe, don't go.